Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. I'm your host, Stephanie Anthony Miles, and thank you for tuning in again. We have a great broadcast for you today, a really great broadcast. Have you ever heard of Cedric, the entertainer? Well, we don't have him. We have Cedric, not the entertainer, Mr. Cedric Kaysen, and we're going to take you on a journey of his life. And the best way to describe his journey is for me to just read the foreword out of his book. The book is called Cedric, Not the Entertainer. And there's a gentleman, a pastor, wrote a bit in here regarding the writing of this book. And I think it just really captures what you're going to hear from Mr. Kaysen today. He says, in this book, Brother Cedric steps from being a hustler to a Marine, husband, father, friend, and a man of God. Ced is not afraid to show us how low one can go and how God is still willing to love us. Be there to pick us up out of the dirt, dust us off, and use us. This book is raw, relative, and relatable. If it does not teach you or teach us to grow in emotional intelligence and spiritual maturity, then we need to read it twice. Remember, Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. Believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and thou shalt be saved. Stay tuned for more smiles and meet Cedric, not the entertainer, but Cedric Kaysen.
Smiles TV presents East St. Louis native Cedric Kaysen, author of Cedric, Not the Entertainer, A Life's Journey and Then Some. Cedric Kaysen, new to the writing world, shares his life's journey from living in poverty-stricken projects, being raised by a single mother, and discovering a father's value as a teenager. From fleeing the drug scene and a bounty on his head in East St. Louis to joining the United States Marine Corps and getting portrayed, he shares the destruction of his career and family, which led him to brew suicidal thoughts. When all he could do was breathe, he exhaled, then found success in the private sector as well as in the boardroom. He has been married to his beautiful wife, Rachel Mnwana Kaysen, from Nairobi, Kenya, for over 29 years. Together, they raised their son, Isaac Kaysen, who is now an 18-year-old college student. It's a journey only Cedric can explain and share the lows and highs that made him who he is today. Get ready for a roller coaster ride through Cedric's life. For Smiles TV, I'm Edie B. Anderson.
Welcome back to Smiles Television Talk Show. You just heard a lot about Mr. Cedric Kaysen, and now you get an opportunity to meet him. Thank you for coming to Smiles Television Talk Show. How are you today?
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for having me.
I'm just so pleased that you chose to come in, and honored that you even took time and flew in just to be on Smiles Television Talk Show.
I've been here, and if you give me an excuse to come home during the fall, this is my favorite time of the year, so I'm here, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Well, let's just jump right into it, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but tell us, why did you decide to write the book? Let's start there.
Well, later in my life, I got to meet my dad's side of the family, and I met a cousin of mine. Her name is Dorothy Witherspoon, and she was inspired by Alex Haley, who wrote the book Roots?
Yes.
And she wrote a book, and she sent it to me, autographed and everything, and I got to read her book, and it just inspired me that, wow, I have a relative that's an author that actually published a book and everything, and it just stayed with me. So it always stuck with me that I had a cousin that write a book, and I knew that I can write a book. So
and also you dedicated the book to your mother, your stepfather, and your wife. So tell us a little bit about that. Why did you decide to do it like that?
Well, they was a big part of my life. You know, my dad, my mom, and my stepdad who raised me. I wanted to dedicate them because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. You know, they taught me a lot of things about manhood, growing up, about ethics, about God, about Christianity and everything. So it's just what they instilled in me, and my wife she was a godsend in my life at a good time, at a period where I was at that point where I was ready and mature enough to meet her.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to dedicate and show the love. And even though my parents are not here now, they're just wanted to dedicate and show how much I appreciate them.
So your wife, Rachel,
Mhm.
what did she think about the book?
She was the one who actually encouraged me to write the book. And then when she was reading the book, she thought it was a very nice book until she got up to the point of my Marine Corps days when I was dating, and she actually put the book down and said, "I don't think I need to read this anymore."
Mm.
So I said, "Hey, no, 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 no! You got to continue to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Please finish reading the book at least till I met, till we meet each other."
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of days later, she picked the book back up and she continued reading the book, and she finished the book, and she thought it was a very well written. She thought it was very truthful, and she thought it was a good. And she believes it's a very good book.
One thing you do very well in the book is all of the hard times that maybe you did inflict on others, or the hard times that you went through, you were able to always you sum things up and point to God.
It started when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
When my stepdad came into our life, he was a God-fearing man, and he was a great husband to my mother and everything like that. And I had given my life to Christ at an early age, but I didn't, how we do that, give our life to Christ and get baptized at an early age, but we just do it for the show
Mm-hmm.
and not from the heart. So that's what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was when my dad met my mother. He was a deacon at Mount Zion Baptist Church on Bond Avenue under Reverend Ross. He was there from the beginning of the church until Reverend Ross basically passed away. So we used to go to that church when I was a teenager. But I never really gave my life to Christ. I really actually gave my life to Christ in Okinawa, Japan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Back in 1991, I was a young Marine, and there were some Christians in our barracks, and I was looking for something to do, and all of a sudden, one of them started giving me the gospel, and I listened to them, and I actually went to church with them, and that's when I actually gave my life to Christ in Okinawa, Japan, as a young Marine, and that's when the Spirit came upon me. When I knew what I was doing, and I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I confessed it with my mouth, and I believed it in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I knew the Spirit was upon me. And not long after that, I backslid.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, but you can run, but all you want,
Mm-hmm.
but God is always with you.
Mm-hmm.
And He had always with me and protected me, even though I was backsliding and doing all this other things. I had, I had that guilt.
Okay.
You knew what I was doing was not right, and I had and the Spirit was heavy on me. But it took a long time for me to come back to find Christ was still with me all through what I was going through. When I stopped and turned around and said I had enough, He was standing there with His eyes, His arms open,
Okay.
and He was with me the whole time behind me. Even though I was running,
Mm-hmm.
Christ was behind me.
Wow, that's a great story. Also, within your book, you you really give us a good description of the slave trade and how we were brought to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
How did you learn of your lineage, and how were you able to gain the information about your family?
Yeah, so my cousin Dorothy Witherspoon,
Right.
she actually wrote the book uh, um, that was inspired by Alex Haley Roots, and she wrote our lineage, and that was from my father's side.
Okay.
And so she did a whole investigation of our family all the way back to where my great grandmother Mandy came off the boat
Mm-hmm.
ship. I believe it was in South Carolina.
Okay.
So that's how I found about my lineage on my father's side. Now, on my mother's side, my cousin, James Earl Jones, who just passed away recently, he wrote a book called Voices and Silences.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, he wrote on my father's side,
Okay.
I'm sorry, on my mother's side, on our lineage.
Mm.
And then I had cousins put everything together, and then we put that together where my great grandfather Bryce and his brother came off the boat.
Mm.
So I'm lucky enough to have both of those lineages
that
from
is.
both sides of the families, from the boat to Arkansas to Mississippi
Mm-hmm.
to migration up north, and that's where I got both of those from.
Wow, and you were blessed to have that happen, because many of us can't trace that far back. My daughter's actually trying to trace our history,
Mhm.
and I'll let you know about that when we finish with
Yes.
it. But let me ask you another question regarding some of the people you mentioned in the book. Why did you choose to mention certain people?
Well, right before the pandemic or during the pandemic when George Floyd got killed, do you remember that?
Yes.
And he was murdered, and it kind of took me back a little bit. And it took my wife back a little bit too. And we were both going to a predominantly white church, Christian church, predominantly white. And we were going there for 15 years, you know. And when George Floyd got murdered, I actually did a prayer request to the church and to my men's group, can we end systemic racism? And they took my prayer request down. So I sent it to another site at the church website, a prayer request that you could post, and I put it up there, and then the next day they took it down. So I had to confront the leadership of the church going, why are you taking my prayer request down? And it was basically explained to me that we're not going to get into politics. And I was like, I don't think murdering a black man is politics. I think there's something that we need to deal with in this country. And I wasn't getting any empathy or anything from this group I was with for so long. It was like they didn't see me or couldn't see my feelings or couldn't see my pain. So I had to make a difficult decision. And after 15 years of dedicated service to this church, I had to make a decision that do I still want to continue to go to a place where they don't see me or they can't be there for me when I need empathy or prayer or anything. Yes. So I made that decision to leave that church. I let my wife know that I'm not, I can't go back to that church because of the way I felt, but I'm not going to make you go with me. You know, it's up to you. And of course, my wife, like, if you go, I go, you know. So we ended up not going to church for a few months during the pandemic, and we was watching services on YouTube and stuff like that, on TV. But I didn't have a place to tithe. So that was important to me. So I had to find a local church where I can feel comfortable and then I can tithe, because I believe tithing into your local church. So we found a church called Crossword Church, and it was a predominantly black church, and I kind of know the founding pastor because I used to see him around town from time to time, but he never once asked me to come to his church. So, and I kind of respected that. You know, he never tried to recruit or whatever. He just spoke and, you know, and kind of knew each other casually. So we ended up going there, and we started going there, and I joined the men's group, and this is what happened. So during this men's group, we called Iron Men.
Right.
Iron sharpens iron. So during the men's group, we sit there every Saturday morning and we discuss, we have Bible studies and we share each other's stories. So when I started sharing my story and those dark things in my life after listening to their stories, I'm like, ooh, I can share mine now. So when I started sharing that, it started releasing some of the weight off me. And it started transforming me. And God was like, you need to just let it go. You need to get all this stuff you've been in keeping back, hiding in you, that's causing depression and anxiety and all this stuff that you've been hiding from everybody. You need to open it up to these men, because these men been through the same thing you've been through. But I haven't been around men like that until I went to this church. So that men's group made me open up to tell all of my dirt, all of my stuff that I've been hiding and all of that. And that kind of just relieved me of all the weight that I was carrying. So then God put it on my heart going, not only that, you need to tell the whole world. So you need to get it not only in this room, but you need to let it out.
But let me ask you
and
this.
That's why God put it on my heart to write my book.
I was going to ask you, what do you want others to get from your book?
So I want people to get out of this book, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've done in your life, God still loves you and he wants to use you. And I know for a fact that if you don't ask for it, you have not because you ask not. And if you pray for anything to be used and to glorify his name, he's going to put it in your heart to do something to glorify him and to lift his kingdom.
When we were talking on the phone, you told me, you said, well, if nothing else, we want to talk about chapter 25 in the book. And I'm just looking now, and for example, chapter 25 talks about for those that are chosen and are not. Give me a little history on that title.
That could be a long conversation. Because you know, some people believe in predestination, some people do not believe in that, but Jesus died for all people. He died for all. But at the same time, the reason I titled it that, everybody's not going to go. You know, everybody's not going to go. You know, just like if you read the Old Testament, God hardened people's heart. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying he's hardening everybody's heart today, but there's some people are not going to go. There's some chosen and some not. That's the only reason I called it that. But I do want to emphasize that Jesus died for all.
Okay.
You know, and but all are not going to make it.
Mm.
You know, so and the only way to make it is to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior.
Yes, sir. That's absolutely right.
And that's why I think chapter 25, if you get through the entire book, you'll understand what the book is about. I didn't want to make it a Christian book, but it's all about bringing people to Christ. You know, this book is about sharing the gospel. And in chapter 25, after everything I went through in my life, and I'm still here spreading the word and letting people know that God is real and Jesus is real. And this is the new beginning of my life, you know, and I'm excited about the rest of my life because I'm a servant at heart. God called me to serve. And that's what I feel good doing is serving. And when I serve, I feel like I'm complete because I know I'm in the spirit, I'm doing his will. And I think this book put me on that path. And it was definitely out of my comfort zone. But you got to get out of your comfort zone sometimes to do the will of God.
That's right.
And that's how he rewards you.
And
you know,
I'm interested in knowing what was the hardest chapter for you to write. And tell our audience a little bit about it, because we don't want to give away everything in the book, but we want to give them a little teaser, kind of.
It was a couple of hard parts in that book. You know, when I lost my good friend in high school, Bridget, when I was in love with her, really, you know, but puppy love, whatever you want to call it. But I was in high school, we were best friends, you know, and I was in the Marine Corps. When I tried to get her to come with me to leave East St. Louis, to get out of East St. Louis. It was a little bit too late because whoever it was, these people put a needle in her arm for weeks and just fried her brain, you know, and she was never the same. When I came back home to find out where Bridget was, so I can, you know, she was the brightest, smartest, most beautiful person in East St. Louis in the class of 1980 in my book. And to see what they did to her, to empty her heart out and fry her brain, it just destroyed me. You know, it broke me. I wanted to get the hell out of this city. I didn't want nothing to do with East St. Louis anymore because I know the pain and the hatred that just people do in this city, what they did to each other back then, anyway. And so that's what I said. I'm done with this city. You know, that was really hard. That was one hard part, and the other hardest part of the book was when I was in the Marine Corps. And I was a staff sergeant. I was a sergeant on my first tour as a Marine Corps drill instructor, and a recruit alligated against me, and this battalion commander was out for me because I'm not going to tell the story.
Okay.
But he bust me. I got reduced from sergeant to corporal. At the same time, I got divorced. At the same time, I lost custody of my daughter, and so everything came caving in. So, and when you get reduced from sergeant to corporal as a drill instructor, you get blackballed from all the other drill instructors, you know. And they kept me on that base because of my daughter, but people see me coming, they'll just turn away, you know. So it was a dark time in my life. And that was the closest I ever came to suicide, having suicidal thoughts when I hit rock bottom. But, you know, and that was one of the most other difficult parts of that book that I had to get through, that I had hidden within me. Because when I got out of the Marine Corps, I pushed all that back. I didn't never want to think of it again or hear it again, but it was always in me. And what came out when I had my son, when my son was born, then I started seeing my daughter again.
Okay.
I started reliving that whole thing that I was trying to forget. You know, and that's when I had to go get see a psychiatrist because I was going through anxiety. I was going through depression. I'm like, where's this coming from? It was all coming from stuff that was hidden from
So
me.
actually, writing was very therapeutic for you.
Well, yeah, seeing a psychiatrist was very therapeutic.
Gotcha.
Group therapy was therapeutic, but this book was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but it was the most therapeutic thing in my life because it let me get all of it out.
And we need to wrap up real quickly. However, tell me what you think about East St. Louis today as opposed to when you left in 1980.
Well, East St. Louis is my home. You know, I was born and raised in East St. Louis. I saw in your intro It's called Touche or something
Yes.
like that. That's the hospital I was born in.
Okay,
It was called
okay.
Centerville Township
At the
Hospital.
time, it was, yes.
So I was born at Centerville on Bond Avenue. I went to Lallemere grade school. I went to Worth Junior High School, and I went to Cahokia High School up until the 10th to the 9th grade. So I'm a Centerville bred and raised. And then when my dad married my mother, then I transferred over to East St. Louis Senior High School. And I graduated, and I went to the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade from East Side.
Right.
So I'm a class of 80. So it's like I have two classes. I have a class of 80 in Cahokia from the 1st grade to the 9th grade. Then I have a class of 80 in East Side. So I have the both of both. I know everybody from both sides of the city. So it's very interesting. But East St. Louis is always my home. I love this city. And just like the one gentleman said, the East St. Louis own Reginald Hudlin, I saw him in an interview, and they asked him about East St. Louis. He goes, the thing about people from East St. Louis is they are prepared for life. Because everybody from East St. Louis, what we know and what we grew up with here, everybody here is real. And when we get out into the real world, we're already prepared for it. That's because we're from East St. Louis.
Wow.
And that's why I love being from East St. Louis.
Well, we're going to wrap this on up, and I want to thank you for taking time to come to Smiles Television Talk Show. Is there anything that you can think of that we did not touch on that you feel is needed?
You can find the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's also Audible, Google Books, and Rakuten. So anywhere you want to get the book, you can find the book.
Okay, Cedric, not the entertainer. Wait, okay, tell me about the title.
Okay. The reason I call it Cedric Not the Entertainer, and I'm speaking for a lot of Cedric out there, because every time you say Cedric, oh, Cedric the Entertainer, and I go, Cedric Not the Entertainer. So that's why I named my book, because when people go, oh, Cedric the Entertainer, and I go, no, I'm not the entertainer, I figured I might as well name my book Cedric Not the Entertainer, so there's no confusion.
And that's right. He takes you on his life's journey and more. And I want to thank you for coming to Smile Television Talk Show.
Thank you for having
If you get the opportunity, will you come back?
Sure.
Okay, see, I put him on the spot. He said yes. He actually said sure. So we're going to hope to see you again. And thank you again. God bless you and God keep you. And don't forget, Cedric, not the entertainer, a life's journey and then some. Thank you for tuning in to Smile Television Talk Show. We are just so grateful to have had our guest today, Cedric Kaysen, not the entertainer. And remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Jesus is the Lord. Amen. The Lord be magnified.
The Smiles Television Talk Show wants to showcase your business, organization, church, and activities. If you have an interest in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show, or if you have any show ideas, contact Stephanie Anthony Miles at smilestv777@gmail.com. You may also call 618-741-3770. Tell your friends to subscribe to the Smiles YouTube channel. Let Smiles TV increase your reach. Remember, you look better with Smile. IDEX Media does a lot. From IDEX Photography to IDEX Films. We help create forever memories and forever impressions. Imagination, image a world. IDEX Media.
Awesome sauce. Yeah, baby.